Oh, great Madam Cotton.
Oh, thanks for getting that right. They rarely do.
Well, what kind of imbecile do you think I am? Of course I know how to address a fortune teller.
You should really spend more time with your grandson.
What?
Oh, monsters! I see the monsters! Many monsters! All kinds of monsters coming to the new world very soon! Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, Capcom has done us all a massive favor and released the roadmap for Iceborne DLC until the end of June. This beautiful revealing of content told us so many things. It gave us so many answers and left us with a few very specific questions. So today, my magnificent little magnolias, I present to you my list of the top 5 most likely monsters to be added to Iceborne, with the idea being that each of these could potentially fit in the available slots in front of us, though it is also worth being aware that there are absolutely more monsters to come after June as well, so that is still of course a consideration. Moving on then and getting our locomotion started with the Loco Monster at
number 5.
I'm alive. I'm alive.
Lachie Icarus.
Yes, of course, Lachie Icarus, the progenitor of the Leviathan skeleton, the master of being a long, bendy water sausage. Lachie Icarus is undeniably a fan favorite, and he fits the pattern in Iceborne of flagship monsters being added, as he was once the flagship of a little game called Monster Hunter Tri. As far as likeliness to come, there was also a basic version of him originally created and coded and almost entirely ready to go in the Monster Hunter World engine when Base World came out, but there were a number of issues with rigging that specific skeleton at the time, so he had to be cut from the initial game. That was 2 years ago now. Let that sink in. The game came out 2 years ago, and at this point, part of me wants to say that he might just be gone forever.
Forever, 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 ever, forever, ever.
But what's to say that someone hasn't been working on him for the last 2 years? Even a super tiny team. And 2 years is a long enough time that if Capcom had people dedicated to this purpose, I think it's totally reasonable to think that it would be perfectly fixed up and complete by now. That said, Lachie Icarus isn't a variant, so he doesn't fit the March update. And is he quite big enough on his own to be the fan favorite returning monster that carries the title update in May? Well, maybe. It's not impossible, but I don't necessarily think he will. If he does come, he'll probably be one of those post-June monsters, but at this point in the life cycle of the game, it's also entirely possible that he both is completed and isn't coming to Iceborne, because the devs have grander plans for him in the next console Monster Hunter game. And even though I think it is relatively possible for Lachie Icarus to come in as DLC for Iceborne in the future, I definitely think there are a number of more likely possibilities, such as
number 4.
I will show you revenge.
Kulve Taroth.
Or more specifically in this case, a Kulve Taroth variant. Yeah, first up, we don't have a Master Rank Kulve Taroth, and the only other monsters that were in the base game, either full on base or even DLC, that don't have any sort of Master Rank representation are Behemoth and Leshen, crossover monsters who I wouldn't hugely expect Master Rank versions of. But Kulve is a full-on monster, a Monster Hunter monster, designed, conceptualized, and implemented entirely by the Monster Hunter team. So it seems unlikely to me that we wouldn't get a Master Rank Kulve in some way, shape, or form.
That would be inconceivable.
Especially considering the developers told us ages ago to not trash all of our Kulve weapons, as there would be a purpose for them in Iceborne, and as of yet, there has not been. Even with Safi Jiva, Iceborne's DLC siege fight, so what does this mean exactly? Well, there are a couple of interesting ideas in this line of thought, especially the wording of the Arch-Tempered section of the roadmap in April. New Arch-Tempered and Master Rank versions of existing monsters. This could just mean specifically Master Rank Arch-Tempered monsters, so people don't think they're adding new Arch-Tempered high rank monsters. It could mean new Arch-Tempered monsters and new Master Rank versions of existing monsters, which would specifically apply to normal Kulve. Or it could mean Arch-Tempered and Master Rank versions of existing monsters in a way that means maybe Kulve Taroth does come to Iceborne and Master Rank, but straight up as an Arch-Tempered for the first time. I mean, think about it for a moment. Base Culve in Base World was literally replaced by Arch-Tempered Culve when she was released. So maybe there is some merit to the idea that she'll just pop up fully Master Rank and Arch-Tempered, but that seems not only less likely to me, but also far less exciting than something like a variant of Culve. Something like a Crystal Culve or an Emerald Culve, as they already have the groundwork laid for Culve existing in the universe that aren't focused on gold specifically, and that could make for one hell of an interesting fight and experience. Honestly, the only thing keeping me from having this entry higher on the list is that we already not only have a siege fight in Iceborne with Safi'jiiva, but with Arch-Tempered monsters being confirmed on the horizon, I have to assume that that also includes an Arch-Tempered Safi'jiiva, with a ton of new equipment and more use of the Awakening system and all of that. So is there really much room left for something like a Culve variant that would have its own siege system? Does Iceborne really have the space for 3 siege fights in its DLC lifecycle? Personally, I can see it going either way, but by God, is it something that I hope to see in some capacity.
Number 3.
What a piece of junk!
She'll make 0.5 past light speed. She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts, kid. I've made a lot of special modifications myself.
Rusted Kushala Deora, Raging Brachydios, and Furious Rajang.
And this one is really 3 monsters combining to make one entry, as it seems a little unfair to give each one their own slot when realistically they represent the same thing. In March, we get 2 new variants, and there are currently 3 monsters with bases in Iceborne that have already pre-existing variants in the old world, these being Furious Rajang, Raging Brachydios, and Rusted Kushala Deora, and I did list those in that order for a specific reason, being that I think that is the least likely of the 3 to join all the way up to the most likely. Furious Rajang, the angriest monkey to ever feel emotions, is an absolute hellscape of a fight difficulty-wise. Absolutely entertaining and super fun. But if we look at Iceborne currently, Base Rajang was added as a DLC monster, which sort of makes it feel weird for a new DLC monster to just be another version of a previous DLC monster. Not to say that that fully counts him out by any means, he's still a heavily requested monster, but it also seems hard, to me at least, to make a Rajang that much harder in the new world than Tempered Rajang currently is. I mean, this guy is a total beast. Raging Brachydios, then, I think has some serious legs under him. I've talked in the past about him being my favorite variant, and I think I am far from the only person to have those feelings about him. Even in the old world, his mechanics were just so damn interesting and well presented that it was hard to not at least find him cool. But imagining him in the new world makes me want to cry with joy before I even see it happen, especially considering that regular Brachydios was added in Base Iceborne and how he got a little bit left to the wayside with the Guiding Lands not having an Eldest Resex section, even though he had his own new status, Blast Scourge, his own entirely new thing. He got a little bit left at the wayside. It's not fair. I'd say he's totally worthy of getting his variant remade, but not quite as likely as Rusted Kushala Deora. This one is super interesting to me because he was simply the most tame variant in the old world. He was heralded as more grounded and physical than regular Kushala, but the fight was never all that hugely different, meaning there is tons of room for improvement. Then we have the point that Base Kushala was actually a part of Base World, not even Base Iceborne, so he's definitely had enough time sitting with the community to get a new version and have it still be exciting. And then finally, and probably most relevant to the likelihood of his return, is that there is a Kushala Deora skin sitting at the top of the Hoarfrost Reach at its highest peak, which 100% confirms that Rusted Kushala Deora can exist in the new world, and I'm just saying, this here, combined with us knowing we get new variants soon, it just seems like such an overwhelming amount of evidence in his favor to me, and I'd honestly at this point be surprised if we don't see Rusted Kushala Deora in the game come March, possibly even with one of these other 2 arriving beside him.
Number 2.
Only the Avatar, master of all 4 elements, could stop them. But when the world needed him most, he vanished.
Alatreon.
The Master Blaster of all that matters, the elemental multi-tool himself, Alatreon. Yeah, so one thing Iceborne is undeniably missing at this point is a proper black dragon. There was a ton of talk about Safi'jiiva being a black dragon, but nothing was confirmed by Capcom, and at this point I'd say it's relatively safe to say that Safi is around Shara-ish Valda level, so not quite black dragon, but still super powerful. If we consider that Iceborne should have a black dragon, as it is the G-rank equivalent expansion, and every G-rank has had some sort of of Black Dragon, then it seems only reasonable that this beautiful slot in May for a fan favorite returning monster will be a creature of extreme power, something entirely capable of holding an entire update on their shoulders without disappointing anyone. And realistically, to me, that leaves us with two choices.
Don't make me choose!
The first is Alatreon. He's beloved by tons and tons of people, so it is totally fair to call him a favorite. And honestly, any Black Dragon is a big enough deal to warrant their own update, especially as they would likely need to come with their own mini map to contain them as well. If I was going purely from how they already exist in the old world, my choice of Black Dragon would undeniably be Alatreon. I mean, imagine seeing 4 different elements being used together like this in the new world. The visuals alone would be absolutely stunning, but the opportunity also exists in Iceborne to mix the elements with special attacks. Think of something like Namielle, for example, with her water puddles that act as mines that are set off by her lightning attacks. This mixing of unique properties, and then consider Alatreon. Dragon, ice, fire, and lightning all in one body. He could be absolutely insane in the new world with our new mechanics and our engine, but if I'm completely impartial, not quite as insane or likely as...
Number 1.
Who are you?
I'm the one. Creator of the heavens and the earth. Alpha and Omega.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Bruce. I'm God.
Fatalis.
And this is the one at the tip of everyone's, well, tongue. Fatalis, the god of all monsters, the destroyer of Castle Strayed, the most powerful being to ever exist in the Monster Hunter universe, yada yada yada, so on and so forth. His lore is massive, it is legendary, it's, well, simply unbelievable. That is, if you've actually fought him in the older games. He is slow, he is predictable, and aside from the odd, impressive little fire move, he's just so bland, so vanilla, for lack of a better word. And that is such a massive part of why I think he is the most likely monster to come to Iceborne. It is the potential to reinvent his image, the ability of this current generation to truly make Fatalis feel as powerful as we've been told he is for over 15 years. Oh yeah, that's right. Iceborne is part of the 15th anniversary of Monster Hunter, which events were held for that specifically had Fatalis as a spotlight. New renders of Fatalis were spotted a while back, and the devs have honestly been favoring him a bit more than you'd normally expect in the last few months. Well, more than you would normally expect, unless there has been a team slowly working on him and preparing him for the new world this entire time. The first Black Dragon in the series, this first incredibly dangerous threat, it would only make sense for him to be the first Black Dragon in the New World engine too, and it would really pay homage to a monster that the devs clearly adore, and that a lot of the community that actually played back in the first generation has a lot of respect for too. And of any dragon I could possibly think of, there is more potential for Fatalis and his equipment specifically as being capable of holding up an entire title update. To me, this simply is the answer. The buildup is too good, the adoration from the devs is too prominent, and the potential to truly reinvent the most lore-powerful monster in the series' history just seems too appetizing to me, especially when you consider that it could directly lead to the inclusion of not only Crimson Fatalis, but also White Fatalis in the future. Imagine a new world White Fatalis, that just gives me chills. And that is why I consider Fatalis to be the most likely monster to be added to Iceborne in the future. Alright everyone, I've been Gone Dinosaur, and this has been my list of the top 5 most likely monsters to be added to Iceborne. Do you agree with my list? What monsters do you think are more likely? Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. This is the brand new outro to tell you all the things that you do that we love, so let's start with something simple and say, oh, we love your eyes. When they're watching us play video games, we make a bunch of jokes that are kinda lame, or when they gaze upon our failures as we try to kill the monsters or important news about the Kingdom Animalia. Rage, Continent, Hollow, we're all here, talking about the things you want to hear, so if you want to be the first to hear, like and subscribe and the bell and we'll cheer. Some of you are patrons even though we are all the noobs and you're the pros, there's nothing we can do to thank you. No, really, there's nothing we could possibly do. Goodbye.